Hello, welcome to another episode of Drinking with Comics. I'm Sean,
And I'm Mike.
and oh man, it's so hot here that my beer is already sweating profusely. Holy shit. Uh, Mike, what are we drinking today, man? This is one of the ones you brought me.
So I've never had this one. This is a new one from Sam Adams. It's called Pool Party. Um, that's all I know about it so far.
So, citrusy, hazy pale ale,
Yeah.
5.5 ABV. I'm not the biggest Sam Adams fan. I do like them on occasion. I've never had this either, so hopefully this will be. It's hot here. I don't know what it's like in Chicago, but here it's hot.
It's 63.
Oh wow, yeah, no, it's like 85.
Yeah. Steamy.
Oh, steamy. Literally pouring the. How the fuck did that work? I'm spilling fucking beer.
Oh no.
Okay. All right, rookie. What the fuck? There we go. Get it.
Yeah,
Man.
I enjoy Sam Adams as like a go-to beer. I enjoy Sam Adams on a hot day. It's nothing too exciting, but it's not that bad either. This would be my this would be my Miller Lite if I had a Miller Lite, I guess.
I know what you mean. This, this reminds me of right away. Wolf Pup.
Yeah, this is for an IPA. It's not too bad.
It's not an IPA, it's just a pale, which of course some people would be like, oh, fuck
Oh,
you. There's no difference. But god damn, I can't believe how much of this beer I've actually spilled. This is fucking crazy.
uh, so would you call it a CHPA?
What's
Citrusy,
it?
citrus, citrus hazy pale ale.
It sounds like a local government agency. I'm here from the
Yeah,
CHAP. We need to investigate your underwear drawer.
I'm liking it though. This is as far as like a pale ale goes. I'm kind of enjoying this. Not
It's
too,
way more of an IPA taste, but that's the citrus.
but it's not the IPA punch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you're getting more the citrus end than you are that hoppy end.
Well, and it's funny. The thing with the hops when they, like I think it's Lagunitas, I think, was the first one. And I think Goose had one too, but it wasn't the green 312 IPA. They had another IPA where it had a grapefruit profile to the taste, but there was no grapefruit in it. It's just there's
Yeah.
something about hops when you roast the right amount of hops the right way. That's part of the flavor profile is this like citrusy grapefruity thing. And then I think people started adding it to accentuate that. This is a good example
Uh
of
huh.
I don't know that there's anything added to this. I think this is just hopped the right way.
Yeah. No, it's a good mass-produced beer, I guess. Yeah, I like it. I wouldn't go out of my way for it all the time, but
No,
if I get in a 12 pack, I'm going to drink it without any problem.
Golden Road. Golden Road is the brewery that makes Wolf Pup, and it's typically in California. In LA, they sell it in 15 packs of cans for $18, and it's a session IPA. It's hazy, has a citrus profile, but it's toned way back, and it's 4.5 ABV. So you can literally drink like I don't know 10 of them, and it's just not really, especially on a hot day, you're just gonna sweat most of it out.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely a good pool, sitting by the pool drinking beer.
Yeah, yeah, they
If you
named it
want like something
appropriately.
with a little punch. Yeah. Pool party.
What are we talking about today?
Oh, so today we're going to do what we're going to call this series. I think we're going to call it like From the Reserve, where we do
Special
old
Reserve.
trades. Special
Special Reserve.
Reserve.
Yep.
Yes. So this is part one in our Special Reserve series, where we're going to cover Grant Morrison's Batman Gothic. Very old, well-aged tale with hints of bourbon and fine charred wood.
Hints of Satan and sacrilege. It's blasphemous on
Sacrilege,
the
yes.
tongue as it rolls backwards.
Yes. I've read a couple of I've been reading comic books a couple of years when this came out, but definitely, right when I started reading comics for sure. So I think this might have been this has been my second Grant Morrison story I ever read. First being Arkham Asylum, which I think is one of the first trades I ever bought.
Arguably, so I believe the timeline is Morrison goes from doing work at DC for like Animal Man and Doom Patrol. All right, that might have even no, that was late 80s. And then does Arkham Asylum the same year that the first Tim Burton Batman movie comes out. It
Yeah.
just sells insane. The Arkham Asylum, I didn't read. I didn't read that until 20 years ago. So there was like a long period where everybody had read it and I had not.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was,
I don't even know why. It just didn't happen.
did you regret that now?
No, not at all. It's
Oh,
okay. It's not one of my favorite Morrison works. I think at the time, for people that were interested in Batman, it was becoming a big pop culture thing. It's so fucking weird that I think people were just it was the right
oh
flavor
yeah,
for that moment. But I know it made him
definitely.
a millionaire. I remember hearing an interview with him where he said, you know, his editor called him. It's like we sold 1 million copies, and he gets $1 per
Nice.
copy, so he's a millionaire. Um, But then DC quickly follows up the success of that with this, pairs him with Klaus Janson, who you know famously worked with Frank Miller on Dark Knight Returns, a bunch of other stuff too. But I mean that's the
Yeah.
big one at DC at that time, right before this, 86. So this is 90. I was reading Batman at that time. It's about when I got into him. Like what was it Detective Comics? I maybe 500. It was like the same year. It was that storyline with the big. It wasn't Bane, but it looks like Bane when you go back and look at it now. I can't remember the name of the
Yeah,
storyline.
like the weird Klansman on steroids thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
So I had read that and a few other issues here or there, and then I read this, and I'm like, what the absolute like this fits like a glove. This is just so. Uh, the story of Gotham's bicentennial, I think it is, or it's well, they bring the
Yeah.
cathedral here from Europe, and they've redone it. And they're gonna open it to the public, and this mysterious man shows up, starts murdering crime bosses, and in what is maybe my favorite scene in any Batman anything, the crime bosses call Batman to their aid from the rooftops with an inverted bat signal.
Yeah. He was not happy
How,
about that.
how awesome is that? I mean, holy shit, it's so good.
Now I remember reading this when it originally came out, thinking was this supposed to be like the tale of the first time they used the bat signal, but as I read it this time, I realized it wasn't. It was just them, hey, we're going to invert it and do it just so we get a hold of him like everyone else does. I didn't get that vibe the first time around, but yeah, I like that. It was fun.
I love the scene where he's like, they're like appealing to him. You know, he's like, turn it off, don't ever use that again. They're appealing to him, and he's like, your kind has made Gotham City a hell. Now rot in it, and just leaves.
Yeah.
Just mic drop.
I like the fact that the villain looks like Milton Berle.
He does. He does.
Like he's the least scariest stand-up comedian from like what the 50s is, like the bad guy killing children and mobsters and smoking cigarettes and immortal and gets shot. And I couldn't stop picturing Milton Berle's voice in it as if it was like him on the Batman TV show being a guest star as
Oh,
Mr. Whisper this week. Um,
I
but what a great villain, though.
yeah.
I'm sad we've never seen anything from him again, but I'm kind of glad we haven't.
Amen.
Yeah, it would be kind of cool to see like a movie with him or something. But yeah, yeah, he's just such a. I like that's Batman's first time out with like kind of the supernatural technically in this one.
Hmm.
So he doesn't quite believe that the guy could come back, especially with the one panel where he's just like,
I love the way. So there's so much in this book, and it's 5 issues, right? This is the second arc. So that year they launched Legends of the Dark Knight, which was the fourth monthly Batman book, or maybe it might have been
mm-hmm.
bi-month. No, I think it was monthly. Yeah, it was monthly.
It was
And
monthly.
so the first 5 were one story. I don't remember who did it. I have it. It has to do with him in the
I think
wilderness.
it was Shaman and it was
Yeah.
O'Neill. Dennis O'Neill did
Yes.
that, maybe?
There. I
Yes.
think you're right. I think you're right. I'll put a visual up to fact check us both.
Yeah.
So I have that. I liked it. Then this started, and I remember reading this as it came out, and I was just like, some of the concepts in here I'd never encountered before.
Yeah.
And there's so much, and it never ever feels like it's overstuffed ever. It's so the way it moves between the different facets. Like I love the way they bring Bruce Wayne's childhood into this. You
Yeah,
know,
where it's like the day before when he gets pulled out, it's like the day of when it all happens. So it's kind of like, um, he gets pulled out of the school and then they go to see Zorro, and we all know what happens next. And I could see that like that's a good reason why, like, oh yeah, this thing happened to me that was
yeah,
sexual abuse, but then the next day my parents got killed, so I forgot completely about point A and focused on point B, because that'll do it to you, like a bigger tragedy will hit you, and then the memories start resurfacing for him. It wasn't unbelievable that it would happen, where there's Batman stories I've read in the past where, like, Hush, for example, was his neighbor, but his other neighbor was Black Mask. There's too many neighbors to be villains.
yeah. It's that.
So
Well,
it,
well,
where that felt shoehorned, this felt more natural. Like, oh yeah, it would make sense that he would forget that. Like, it wouldn't be something he would remember, because the biggest tragedy of his life was going to happen in a week from now. So the mental pushing that back, well, it didn't seem very unpausable to me, as opposed to someone else that, like, that tragedy alone in school could have formed him as a going forward, like anyone else that could be the origin of, like, oh, I almost got sexually abused in um, grade school, and now I wear a bat's costume. Work
well,
perfectly with that, but
agreed. But he has the bigger
yeah,
tragedy that comes up right after that. But
yes,
so I want to talk for a minute about like it's funny that you refer to it as sexual abuse because I don't think any other readings, and I've read this, I couldn't even tell you how many times in my life since it came out, at least a dozen. And it never really dawned on me as far as it being sexual abuse before, because what do we see? We see, well, so he references that at this, they use the British, um, school template, right? Like it makes me think of the Smiths headmaster ritual, right?
hmm
Those private schools, private boys' schools, where it's just all this bad shit just bloomed, in the just the environment that fosters secrecy and perversion and stuff. And he
yeah,
does reference that, but specifically with his friend, his young friend, and then and the instructor who turns out to be Mr. Whisper, right?
yeah. It was like Mr. I liked all the
Morgan's,
aliases were basically sounded like Mr. Whisper too.
yeah, yeah, they did. They were
Headmaster
all very
Winchester, was it?
Winchester. There you go.
Winchester, Headmaster Winchester, and I think he had another name that was like the
Wicker.
church Wicker. Yeah,
Yeah, in
all
the
of them
present
very
day, where
whispery. Yeah,
he was hired by the city to help with the unveiling of this cathedral, which really just falls right into his plan that he's been hatching for 300 years. But we see him with Wayne, young Wayne, bent over the desk, paddling him. Well, I mean, he goes beyond paddling. Paddling implies somewhat passive. He's like,
yeah,
beating him basically. And in a way that definitely, I feel like in the context of our time now, we know like, yeah, that's if it's bordering on sexual abuse because really, who's going to do that? Like, I don't know, the
yeah,
bend over the desk thing, it's creepy. But I don't think it gets there. And the whole reason is because he basically does it simply so that he can see his young friend who disappears, severed head in the trash can. I fucking love that shot, dude. I love that shot.
yeah. It's kind of gruesome.
But in the most like it's I don't know. Klaus Janson really brings something to this, a tone that is just perfect. There's like bits of noir, there's definite bits of horror and like the whole Catholic exploitation, but also like German. giallo, maybe even like a skosh. It's just
Yeah,
but it's all blended very perfect, and overall, like as a Batman story, right? So, and there's
yeah.
mobsters. It's a synthesis of a lot of different stuff going on in pop culture or the underground pop culture of the 80s at its time. And I just think it works perfectly. The issue three, he goes to fucking the drowned monastery, was it in Lake Des, which is was it, it's not, is it Austria? In Austria, right? I
It's
love
Austria, which I looked it up. That doesn't really exist, I don't think. Or my Google just thought I wanted to look at lake dresses. Couldn't tell.
there's points where it seems a little bit primitive, and some of that is the coloring of the day. Like the flashback sequences are very like monochromatic.
Yeah, I feel like rereading this, and I think I had this problem when I read it the first time. I'm not a huge fan of the artwork, but I'm not questioning like Klaus's artwork itself. I think it could just used remastering, if that makes sense.
That
Like
makes sense.
someone
I could
else
I could
coming
see
and
that.
coloring it and making it a little more updated would be kind of fun. Which they've done with like Killing Joke and Sandman, and they look great. And I would love to see that done on this. It's never going to happen. It'll probably happen on Dark Knight before it ever happens on this. Um, but
Maybe.
yeah, there's
Yeah, never
things that
say
are
never.
like, yeah. Well, if they
Never
ever
say
make a
never.
movie out of this,
Yeah,
which
I
would be
could
cool,
see
I
that.
think this would make a good movie.
It would definitely
Um,
make a good movie, but they would
yeah,
have to get past the fact that like, is Warner Brothers going to make a Batman movie that doesn't have one of his rogues gallery? You know what I mean? Like they started to kind of get close to that with the last movie, even though it spins out of the Riddler, but then like there's a whole period in the movie where it says, well, I guess Catwoman is still, I don't know. It's the loosest
yeah,
interpretation of a lot of that stuff. I don't necessarily know for the better of the movie, but it does show they can think a little bit more outside the box as opposed to, no, got to be the Joker every time or whatever.
yeah. I mean, it could be. I would like to see like a more as if they did it as like this is the first time Batman deals with the supernatural, or an animated movie would be kind of neat too if they got dark enough. I mean,
Yeah.
they do a lot of good animated movies that are just kind of self-contained and it's not super expensive. So I can see that working with this one. Um,
And I could see, and
yeah,
they did like Batman and Son, right? As an animated thing. I never
yeah,
watched it, but that's a Morrison.
Batman and Son. Yeah, but that tied more into the uh, animated TV or the animated movie universe they did, even though it was Batman and Son. They just put Damian into that universe, so
Yeah.
which he's amazing in. But they even did Hush was the one or when they did that. The cartoon's way better than the book. Um, Mainly because
I
Damian's in it, which is kind of fun.
I feel I love Damien at his height.
Yeah,
It's funny though because Morrison, wrote for what I forget years, 5 years, something like that. Batman and like that was the height of his fame. I feel like as far as he started to become more like almost a household name, almost.
well, I
And
don't think
this,
he never wrote Batman until like what 20 years ago with like New
yeah,
52 right before New 52 hit. Yeah, he did that.
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, so
Oh, okay.
that's what I'm talking about. But so it's funny though, at the height of his fame, this is still not widely known. And in fact, to the point where I read this as a kid, I didn't pay attention to who wrote it. I reread it several times. And then in the very early 2000s, I got into the Invisibles, and that made me a Grant Morrison fan. And I read, Filth, Seven Soldiers of Victory, Bananarama, WE3, blah, 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 blah. And at some point during all of that, and I was reading as Batman, but at some point, probably around the time that I was reading like Invisibles and The Filth, so 2003, 2004, I pulled this back out to read it, not realizing it was Grant Morrison. And I was like, oh, holy shit. I was really a fan before I even knew that I was a fan. He wasn't a household name to
Yeah.
me, or I mean, he wasn't a known name to me. when I was younger. So when I read this original, I didn't know who the fuck he was. I just read it and liked it.
Yeah. That's the other thing about this book is it's very self-contained, where if you read like his other stuff, like Seven and Soldiers ties into JLA, JLA ties into
Yeah,
Final Crisis ties into um shoot, I can't remember what the other one is. They all tie
yeah.
together, just like I think there was what was it, Invisible's Filth and Doom Patrol tie together in their own way.
Doom Patrol didn't. Invisibles and Filth they don't tie together, but they're loosely part of a trilogy, and I forget what the third one in the trilogy is.
The diver guy with the fish sidekick,
Sea Guy, maybe.
sea guy.
I
Yeah,
mean,
there was something that was like tied in.
I definitely had fan inertia with Morrison when I first got into him, and some of this stuff that I don't give a shit about. Like I have his like Action Comics from New 52. I read it for at least 9 months,
Yeah, that was
and
tough.
I was buying it because it was Grant Morrison, and at some point now I don't ever anything he writes I might, which I don't even know what he writes, but I might look at him and be like, oh, I'm glad he's still working, but I'm just not interested. I'm not saying the right thing wouldn't hook me and bring me back. In fact, it's funny. I just ordered a Blu-ray yesterday for Adam Egypt Mortimer's film from 2019 called Daniel Isn't Real. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Great movie.
Okay.
Had been wanting to buy it on disc for a while just to have it. And the thing that actually made me go and order it is I read a post on social media from Adam Egypt Mortimer that said, I had a great time doing a commentary track for my movie Daniel Isn't Real with Grant Morrison. It's on the Blu-ray. I was like, I'm gonna fucking buy that right now. Like,
I remember one time I was watching what was it, MTV, I think, when MTV showed music videos every once in a while, and they're like, the new My Chemical Romance video's out, and Grant Morrison was the bad guy in the video. Did you ever see
that's
that?
no, but that's right. That what's his name? Gerard Way is a huge Grant Morrison fan, which you can
Yeah,
tell. You
I
can tell if you read his
I don't
stuff.
think I like his music, but I know I have a great nerd conversation with Gerard Way.
Yeah, yeah,
Not a music one, but a great comic book conversation.
yeah. It's
Um,
same thing.
yeah, it would be one of those things like, wow, I don't like your music, but you're fun to talk to.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. But yeah, like in the video, he's what, it's an Invisibles video basically for that. Like when you watch, it's like, this is just the Invisibles.
Huh.
Um, yeah, he's even dressed in a white suit, King Mob style in the video.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Did you ever watch Happy?
Oh, dude. Well, the first season's fucking one of the fun. I feel like it's one of the best comedies I've ever fucking seen. Um,
Yeah.
Second season, I kind of stalled after a couple episodes. I'm like, I might go back to it. I might not. I don't know. It didn't seem like it necessarily. It seemed like they were kicking a dead horse. Maybe a little bit. I could be wrong.
It got interesting towards the end, and then like God shows up as one of the imaginary friends, which was kind of neat.
That's interesting.
And then they kind of set up what could have been an interesting third season, of course, and that never panned out. But yeah, it's he's not doing much comic book wise. I think the last thing he did was not, it wasn't Final Crisis, but that final countdown. What the heck was that big
No,
DC
no, no.
crossover?
It's the one with the haunted comic book is at the heart of it. I can't think of what it's
Yeah,
called. There was the issue that was clearly his version of Watchmen. Um, I feel like he got a little bit too meta for his own good at some point, and not because he's a pompous ass, but because he really believes in pushing shit. Like the Invisibles, 100%. I feel like if you read that under the influence of things, or maybe even sober, I remember reading that with a fever in my first apartment. And on a Saturday, I was by myself. I had a fever. I was reading it, and it 100% affected my central nervous system. And it like made me feel like I was having like audio hallucinations. Like it's like a psychedelic if you take it in the right dose. And the same thing happened to me. The Filth is both of those are very fucking powerful. And then the other one, do you ever read Nameless? The 6-issue cosmic horror comic he did like maybe 10 years ago?
no, I did not.
So we'll do that for this show because I just pulled that
Okay.
out and dude, it is it is the last thing he did. The most recent thing he did where I was like, I would fucking like tattoo, I would burn these pages into my flesh. Like it is just insane. It's so good. Uh he always punches at what is has been done and what can be done and try, his Superman 3D, which had something to do with Final Crisis, was the
Yeah, that
best
was
use of
good.
Superman I've ever fucking seen. Right? I
Yeah.
don't like Superman, but that was where he made it this thing that like I can't even explain what he did with it. It's incredible.
And All-Star Superman's really good too.
In a more
Um,
classic comic book sense, yes,
yeah,
for
but
sure.
that's what he does. Those like he has a genuine love for comics that shows. Like
Yeah.
he shows like it can be weird and you can still love it at the same time. Like it
Yeah.
can be violent, you can still love it at the same time.
Uh, and,
Yeah,
and and it occurs to me, people now might not even know, like if you're not really that familiar with Grant Morrison, if you watched and enjoyed Doom Patrol on HBO or whatever the fuck it's on, um, that is so Grant Moore. I mean, they're basically
yeah.
taking 70% of Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol and turning it into this TV show. And
Well,
I'm so glad you got me to watch that because I'll never forget watching that first season the first time being like, I can't believe the Beard Hunter. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's amazing that somebody was like, we're going to put this in a show and it lasted 4 seasons.
yeah. And probably could have gone another one if it wasn't for Discovery buying out
Yeah.
HBO.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of Beard Hunter, like Beard Hunter appeared on Teen Titans Go.
Yeah. You told me, you or Joe Kohler told me that.
Weird. How it was me because Joe Color doesn't like Teen Titans Go. But how odd is that? Like
That's pretty
just that
odd.
weird character on a kid's cartoon. Yeah, it's those. Is this book what is this book? 30, 40 years old now?
1990. Late 80,
1990.
89, or yeah. Well, it's probably started coming out in late 89. Um,
Yeah.
like the final month, because the cover is always ahead, right? And so number one says what does it say? I think it says April 90. So,
So 1990. Yeah. So he would have done it
but
in 89, 90. But that's what math not good right now.
no,
30,
I
40, 40
mean,
years ago, right?
yeah, it's basically 40 years ago. So,
Yeah.
uh, I mean,
30, yeah. But those people that grew up reading this stuff are the ones that are making media now,
exact exactly. But it's
which
just
is
weird
great.
that they're making media. That doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is that a company like Warner Brothers would greenlight that. Like that just I'll never forget when they announced it. I'm like, it's not gonna be any good. Because they did that like when they had that DC app and they did the Swamp Thing show, and I was all psyched for that. That show
Yeah.
sucked. I watched one episode, I was like, fuck you. Alec Holland running around in cargo shorts and sandals. I was like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't even bring myself to watch it.
It's
But yeah,
awful.
you got shows like that. Everything Everywhere All at Once is very Grant Morrison-y feeling to it. Marvel's Legion, FX's Legion, or X-Men's Legion, whatever you want to call it. Like they just ripped out of Grant Morrison's brain and made a show.
Yeah, it's so
Uh,
weird.
yeah, it's there's just so much influence out there. And it's funny, like the one TV show he's done so far, which is Happy, is the least Grant Morrison-y show that I could think of that would be
Dude,
related to Grant Morrison.
isn't it? It almost reminds me. I remember when that was coming out and I was reading it. I'm like, it's like Grant Morrison's doing his version of Garth Ennis.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it seems like a Garth Ennis story. If you just gave me bullet points of what it's about and I didn't know who wrote it, I'd be like, Garth Ennis?
Yeah.
And then the show even more feels like a successful adaptation of Garth Ennis. It's just so weird that it was like, no, it was Grant Morrison. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I like, to me, Happy feels more in lines of The Boys and Preacher than it
Yeah.
did like Doom Patrol and Legion
Yeah.
and other weird ass shows like that. And it's just so funny that like that's the one thing he had that's like successful, kind of. I mean, Grant Doom Patrol is successful because he wrote it and they used a lot of his stuff,
But he's
but
also not involved in it.
yeah, he's not involved in it.
He's involved and happy as a producer or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, he and wrote the show
Yeah.
for TV. So I mean, yeah, how weird is that? And yeah,
It's pretty weird.
it's yeah, it feels more like a Garth than a Grant show.
But so he does have different. He's not just one thing, obviously, which we know that.
Yes.
I'm just saying that I'm saying that because it's a good lead back into Gothic in that this is a romance, not as far as like a romantic movie or story, but like romantic as in that era of literature, right? And it says it right when
Yeah.
you open it up, a romance in 5 parts. The whole cathedral that's booby trapped to end the lives of the city for this insane megalomaniacal like evil scheme, and then the whole like I'll never forget reading this. There's so many moments in this that I think about when I read it. I remember the first time I read it distinctly and how I felt and what I thought, and like one of them is in, think it might be the third issue where it's like the last of the mobsters, right? And he's telling Batman the story about the first time they killed Mr. Whisper. He's like, yeah, it
Yeah.
was like 20 years ago, and me and the Graziano and the Kane brothers, and then we were all up and comers, and we were, moving and gaining a lot of ground in crime, and then this motherfucker starts killing kids, and it makes the police completely, they're just cracking down on everything. So they're like, we'll take him out. And there's a scene
Yeah.
where he's taught, he's telling it and we're seeing what he's saying. And it's they bust into this apartment and it's Mr. Whisper or Milton Berle standing over what looks like, like a body bag or like a something. And he's got like a knife. And he's like, he was standing over this like bundle and the bundle, it was mewling. And I don't know. It's so fucking dark and gothic and like he's able to have this urban gothic feel, but also then like he goes, it's not just gonna be urban gothic. Let's go back and like I'm gonna take you to a drowned monastery that's a couple hundred years old in Scandinavia too. So by the way, or in
Yeah.
Europe.
Austria, I think it was.
Yeah, Austria.
And there's like a crazy uh Ginsburg trap, like straight out of the TV, like Batman TV
Yeah,
show. They've
and
got
which
escape from.
they don't show you how he escapes from it either because it's inescapable, right? Like they just show
Yeah.
him sweating it and like watching the various pieces fall into place, and then he's just like, "Nice try."
Yeah. Clearly he got out with his hand because he's doing that with his hand. But yeah, it wasn't like, okay, but it's Batman. He got out of it.
Yeah.
So the whole thing's about, mobsters getting killed. That kind of relates to these children getting killed. And then you get to the bad guys, like, oh yeah, I kind of just did that as a pastime. That wasn't my thing. My thing is I'm
Yes.
going to poison everybody with a plague and then trap all their souls in this church.
And offer them to the
But
devil in lieu of my own. It's also so
yeah,
Faustian, right? Like just
yeah.
I love it. I love it. It's so grandiose.
And the fact that he just identified Bruce Wayne like right away.
Oh, dude, I love that so much. Where he's just like, I think it's Batman calls him Winchester first, and then he's like, I know you,
Yeah.
Wayne. Like it's just it's so I love that exchange so much. It's good, man. It's a tight read. It takes no time to read, in my opinion. And it's fairly verbose, but not overly. Um, not like if anybody has seen our Instagram page, I posted a page from old Punisher Warzone recently that I was just like, if this isn't the most fucking text on a page I've ever seen, I don't know. Like it's just crazy. It isn't like that, but it's written,
Yeah. It is. It's written. It's got like just things that make Batman Batman. Some great Alfred quips in it.
He's so good. He's so good in this.
Yeah.
His like sarcastic little jabs So that's Special Reserve. Grant
Yes.
Morrison, Klaus Janson, Batman Gothic. Go find it, read it, and worship at the altar of it, which apparently requires a dead nun and an inverted cross. So maybe don't do that.
And Gothic architecture. Don't
And
forget
Gothic
about the
architecture.
Gothic architecture.
I also love when he's like talking to Alfred. He's like, I know very little about about sacred geometry and Gothic architecture. And he's like, remind me to order some books. And first of all, I don't buy that he would like, he's almost acting as if he's never heard of it before, but then he goes and explains it in its entirety. You know, like, but order some books anyway, because, you know, just because.
Yeah. I gotta learn these things because clearly it is important to my war on crime.
Yeah. I mean, what was in
Yeah.
this fucking case, so that's for sure. So,
Yeah,
but
that's how Batman rolls.
if you were going to ask me my favorite Batman villain of all time, it's him, Mr. Whisper. Second only to Professor Pig.
Really, not Professor Pig first? Mr. Whisper didn't dance.
I don't care. I love both, but I love Mr. Whisper, and it was very formative in my comic. This was a very formative series for me in my reading comics.
He's definitely up there in my B list or C list or one time only list. Definitely probably top of that list. I think like there's a lot of Batman villains I like because they're characters in their own right.
Yeah, we've talked about this, you know, definitely. That's Drinking with Comics Special Reserve, Batman Gothic. Go read it and grab yourself a Sam Adams pool party and have a fucking pool party. Just don't read the comic in the pool. You know, don't do that.
Oh, and it ties in because Pool Party is the name of the song by the Aquabats, and Batman is basically an Aquabat when he runs into the thing. So it all ties together. If anyone was like, "Why did you pick Pool Party?" That's why.
But
and not because we just randomly picked it.
No, and that was what I was thinking. I'm surprised that you were able to know my innermost thoughts.
Yes. Tune in next time to find out how a beer ties into whatever we're reading.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But until that next time, my name is Sean.
And I am Mike.
And this is Drinking with Comics. Hi, I'm Sean. Join me and my friends every week for the Horror Vision, where we talk about horror movies.